Hello everybody. In today's video I want to give you a little update on my Ferrari 430 Scuderia. With this car I really want to be able to paint an accurate picture of what it's actually like to own a Ferrari like this. The dealership experience, the ownership experience, the driving experience, the good, the bad and the everything in between. As a little backdrop, we've got one of my favourite pubs in North Essex where I've come to visit some family. This is the Half Moon at Belsham St Paul. I've had the car now for about 2.5 months in total, and in that brief time managed to put 3,500 miles on the clock, bringing the grand total now up to 25,500. By Ferrari standards, that's moon mileage. This is practically a taxi now. I've really enjoyed it. Genuinely, this car is absolutely sensational. It's everything that I would hoped it would be, and then just a little bit more. The truth is, not every Ferrari, I think, really lives up to expectations. In fact, even my all-time favourite, the 355, does have some flaws, notably the steering. This, though, is utterly and totally sensational. The feel of it is amazing. It's actually more comfortable than you'd think, although it's not really a very natural motorway cruiser. If you're on tarmac, it's okay, it's not too loud inside, but on concrete road surfaces, it's not great. In fairness, it's probably only as bad as some modern 911s that I've driven, and even the F8 that I had recently, I didn't think was actually that much quieter than this, so it has been impressing me. Storage is excellent. You can carry loads of stuff with this. It's far better than my Lamborghini was, and that's one of the reasons I went for a 430. Fuel consumption is one of my few criticisms of this car. Yes, I know, it's a Ferrari, it was never going to be that good, but I had at least hoped it might be a little bit better on the motorway than the 550. After all, it's got 4 fewer cylinders, a somewhat smaller engine, and it's a lot more modern. Now, the 550 will do about 22 to the gallon. This, at its absolute best, I've recorded around 20. And with Shell V-Power in Scotland costing often over £1.50 a litre, that really hurts. And as for economy when you're not on the motorway, doesn't even bear thinking about. At least the fuel tank is a good size, 95 litres, meaning you aren't filling up too frequently, but still a lot more often than you'd really like to. Maintenance, however, has not been the easiest with this car. When I test drove it, there are a few small issues that I noticed which needed rectifying before I took delivery. They included the seatbelt, or part of it, being a little bit twisted, the headlining had begun to sag, and there was a little knocking noise from the front on occasion. I mentioned this and I was told, yep, all these things will of course be sorted before you take delivery. Now, 360s and 430s are well known for ball joint issues. Essentially, Ferrari built them with a mild steel and a chrome plating on top. Over time, that chrome plating flakes away, that then gives you a little bit of play, and that little bit of play eventually turns into a lot of play, and you get suspension movement. That is the knocking sound you'll often hear on this car, and you get it on others too. I just assumed that's probably what it was. And when I picked the car up, I said to the salesperson, what was the knocking noise in the car? What did you do to fix it? And he told me, well, you see, because this is the Scuderia and it doesn't have any carpets or things in it, the noise you were hearing actually was just the sound of stones hitting the bottom of the car. At that point, I knew we did have a bit of a problem. Now, I did all my filming on the day, which you've already seen, the collection video and the 430 versus F430 versus Challenge Stradale comparison video. However, I noticed straight away that the seatbelt was still a little bit twisted, and when I took the car away, it was still knocking. This knock over the next 24 hours got quite a bit worse, but luckily 2 days later I was actually scheduled to be back at Dick Lovett anyway for the Ferrari Portofino M launch. So I called them in advance and I said, look guys, this problem is definitely still there. It's not stones hitting the bottom of the car. Can you do me a favour? Can you get one of the techs to take the car out and then just tell me if you really think it's stones hitting the bottom of the car or not? Because I don't think that it is. Now, we went down there. I gave the car to the sales guy. He went out with a tech. Half an hour later, came back, drove the car straight into the workshop and said, yeah, no, really sorry, you are correct. That's definitely not stones, is it? No, it's not. Now, I didn't really expect them to be able to get that much actually done on the day, but in fact they did quite a bit of work to the car. Now, I've been having some issues with this door handle here, which have subsequently reappeared, unfortunately. 360s and 430s are also known for having the cable inside here snap, which means you then cannot get into your car. That's a bit of a problem. So they fixed that, no issues. They also replaced all the bushings on the front suspension too, and sorted my twisted seat belt. However, at the same time, I was told that the ball joints on the car were probably going to need doing at some point in the near future. This was not what I wanted to be told, but I devised a plan. And I said to the guys there, tell you what, I'm planning on going up to Scotland fairly soon. I really love this car and I want to take it. So I'll take this car up to Scotland. I will hammer it around all the lovely, if very bumpy, Scottish roads. And then after that, anything and everything on this car that was going to work its way loose will be loose. And that means identifying all the problems shouldn't be an issue. Do you mind if I do that? Bring the car back to you, and then everything that needs sorting gets sorted. They said, yep, no problem at all, do that. So that was the plan. I'll admit at that point in time, I was a little bit upset. I didn't really understand why it was that I was ignored when I said to them that the suspension was knocking at the front, and even after it was fixed, it began knocking about 100 miles later, as the mechanic told me that it would. I think it would have been much easier for them to prepare the car properly in the first place, but what's done is done. And when the car did go back to them after my Scotland trip, they went through it with a fine-tooth comb and sorted everything, including several issues I hadn't actually even noticed myself. So, in no particular order, we did 3 ball joints, we did some more bushes at the rear, we also did some further tinkering with the door handle, but that needs looking at again. They replaced the front brake pads, which I hadn't asked for, but they looked at them and said, yeah, they're just starting to crack a little bit, so we're going to replace them anyway. They've also ordered in some new front tyres, again, not something I'd actually said to them to do, but they did, which is lovely. They even replaced both door trims. Now, if you've seen Through Glasses 360 restoration, he'll have pointed this out as well. So there's this little flocked trim that goes around the door here, and mine was really starting to wear down in some places. This is a problem because when you're on the motorway, a lot of wind noise was getting into the cabin. I'd only said about doing the driver's side because the passenger side wasn't too bad. They actually did both for me without asking. They even replaced the exhaust at the back. Yep. Apparently it was emitting a sort of fine powder, which basically means the inside of it is breaking up. This is not an unknown thing on these cars, and I hadn't noticed that, so I got a brand new sort of £2,000 exhaust back box chucked in. So I have to say, I was happy that when they did finally get the car in, they sorted absolutely everything and then some. I asked them for an invoice of all the work that they'd done so I could stick it in my records, and the total was around £8,500. That's not really a truly representative figure, that's just something they sort of drew up for me so I could have something to go in the history file, and if you were paying them to do that work, you'd have got some discounts and things on the labour and possibly the parts as well. But that's still an awful lot of money, and I'm pretty sure that your first thoughts were the same as mine, which is that surely all of that should have been done before the car was collected. And there were certain things definitely that were missed, like the ball joints, the front tyres I think were a bit lower than they really should have been, etc, etc. However, the truth is quite a few of the problems I experienced with this car only manifested after I'd put several hundred miles on it. If I were running a Ferrari dealer, I would say to all of my guys that when you get a used car in, you do at least 100 miles in it, and that way you can fault find with the car and hopefully prevent the customer from having to come back the same week that they pick it up. That, after all, is quite embarrassing. Stuff happening 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line, you can never really prevent. But you do want to make sure the car goes out of the workshop in as good a condition as it possibly can. I actually bumped into the previous owner of this car before I went up to Scotland when I stopped off at the Ferrari Challenge at Snetterton, and he said he absolutely loved it, he adored it, he really missed it, he's replaced it with a 16M, and he never ever had any problems with this car, yet there were issues with it when I collected it. So that tells you that it's not just the dealer's fault, a lot of owners don't actually realise when things are wrong with their cars either. I have had several conversations with Dick Lovett now about what happened and how they can try and prevent it from happening again. But the unfortunate truth is that this is a very, very difficult thing to do. To give you some context, by the way, my brand spanking new Lotus Evora actually had probably just as much work, if not a lot more, done on it within the first 6 months that I owned that car. Lotus replaced all of the wheels, we replaced several parts of the braking system, we had to replace 2 ball joints, or 2 wishbones actually, because they were knocking as well. We replaced a headlight, and we even replaced the seats in the car too, because they were broken and Lotus simply couldn't fix them. Getting stuff for a 13-year-old Ferrari has been vastly easier than it has for a brand spanking new Lotus. So I'll at least say that for them. And the problem is that as much as I'd love to say, yeah, every dealership should go and drive these cars and fault find with them, we've become so obsessed with really low mileage cars that you just couldn't really do that. They simply can't afford to go and put miles on these cars, even though in the real world it'd actually result in the cars being a little bit better. So if you are going to buy a Ferrari, wherever you buy it from, please use it as much as you possibly can in the first month at least, because that way you'll be able to find out if there are any problems hidden in the car, and very often they are hidden, they aren't always obvious, and that might mean that the rest of your ownership experience is just that little bit better. Oh, and please don't think that I'm making excuses for Dick Lovett, because I'm absolutely not. They would be the first to tell you that I have let them know on many occasions just how unhappy I was with getting this car in the condition that it was. However, I am the sort of person that also strongly believes when things are done right that you need to give praise as well, not just criticise when things are wrong. And every business will make mistakes. Dick Lovett made a mistake with the way this car was prepped, but they've been exemplary with putting it right, as previously mentioned. I know a lot of people that have gone and bought cars for similar money, sometimes more, sometimes less, from independents, and they've had quite a few more issues than I have. And they've subsequently been told to either just go away or try and get the issue solved by the warranty company. In case you're ever in that situation, that, by the way, is illegal and absolutely not what should be happening. I've got a video coming up fairly soon on a Ferrari in a similar situation, and if you thought this was bad, you ain't seen nothing. At the very least, I can say that when I've presented an issue to Dick Lovett, they have sorted it. Since I got the car back, I have noticed that there is another small knock in the front end, and the moment I mentioned it to them, they said, look, you tell us when you want the car picked up, how you want it picked up, what you want done, and it will be done. So at the very least, I can say that the after-sales element of Dick Lovett is at least doing what it should, and that I can't say for a lot of other manufacturers or dealers. Now, I will be the first to admit that I can myself be something of a tricky customer, and Dick Lovett have been very good at keeping up with my sometimes unusual requests. To give you an example, when they'd finished working on this, I actually had a Porsche press car, Panamera Turbo. You'll see a video on that soon. And I said to them, if you could make my life easier, I'd be very grateful. If you could just drop this car off at Porsche Cars GB's HQ and swap it with the M340i courtesy car you've given me, that'd be great. Saves me going 4 junctions down on the M4. And funnily enough, they said, yep, not a problem, that's absolutely fine. And even Porsche were okay with it too. So thank you very much to all involved for making my life just that little bit easier. Did lead to one humorous moment though, where I went to the security guard at Porsche HQ and said, could I have the keys to the Ferrari, please? And he went, well, how do I know it's your Ferrari? And I said, well, how many people come to your door and ask for Ferrari keys, not Porsche keys? Fair point, well argued. And then obviously showed him my ID, and he remembered that I was actually supposed to be picking it up, and I had arrived with a BMW, so everything was sorted and done. So yeah, big thanks to those guys for making that a little bit easier. Things don't always go to plan though, and I am at least happy to say that in the worst case scenario, Dick Lovett will support their customers. You'll recall my friend James Dean picked up an FF, which I absolutely loved, from Dick Lovett. That is in fact how I wound up with this car, because before then I had no idea about how Ferrari finance worked. However, there were also some issues with the prep on that car. It had 2 buckled wheels, and on one journey back from London, the under tray worked its way loose. That's not so good. That went away, it got fixed, came back. He then had another issue, which was nobody's fault, and that then meant the car was off the road again for another week. He then got it back. We took it out to go to a birthday party, and on the way home, the throttle pedal failed. We didn't know what it was at the time, but it told us that the all-wheel drive system had failed, the Manatino had failed, and most worryingly, if you took your foot off the pedal in neutral, the car would simply keep revving all the way to the red line, or if you were driving along, it would sustain 30 miles an hour without any input from you. That obviously is rather worrying. The car went off once more, got fixed after several weeks, came back, and then unfortunately about 2 or 3 days later it gave another fault once again. Because James was using that for work, that simply was unacceptable. Dick Lovett agreed, and so the car was rejected. I know a few people have wondered why it reappeared at Dick Lovett for sale. That is why, and I hope the new owner has a lot more luck with it than James did. It's a shame really, because it was genuinely an absolutely fantastic car, and I think another victim of just not being driven enough. Now, I know it'd be very easy for you to think that I'm only getting all of my issues sorted because I'm buddy-buddy with Ferrari, I'm in with them, and therefore Ferrari's press office have put pressure on Dick Lovett to make sure that I'm well looked after, so I say nice things. That, I'm happy to tell you, is absolutely not true whatsoever. There's only one instance where Ferrari themselves got directly involved, and that was actually with regards to James's FF, because there was a problem with collecting it on one occasion that was really quite bad, and Ferrari got involved because they said, no, this is absolutely not how we run things, and they wanted us to know that it was being taken care of and that it wouldn't ever happen again. So that's the only time Ferrari themselves have actually gotten involved, which is good to know, because it shouldn't really have to be a YouTuber in cahoots with the manufacturer to get things done, and that is not what's happened with this. Now, James is actually back in a Ferrari once again. It didn't come from a Ferrari main dealer, and it's got a hell of a story attached to it. That, of course, will be talked about in a separate video. I would be lying if I said that I was truly happy with how my first few months of 430 ownership have gone. I think things should have been somewhat better at quite a few different moments, but these things will happen, and I'd like to think I've done a fairly good job of explaining both sides of the argument. I would also be lying if I said that I hadn't been massively enjoying this car. It is absolutely sensational. I love the way that it looks. In fact, the grey is even growing on me. The gold wheels do really make it. Most people tend to like the gold wheels, although some don't like the fact that it does slightly clash with the yellow calipers. Still thinking about what to do there. The reaction from the public is really good. Everyone that I've let drive it has been really, truly blown away, and that includes some people that are not very easily impressed. Even the gearbox, the F1 gearbox, which in most other cars would be a real Achilles heel, actually here is the star of the show. I genuinely love this car, and I cannot wait to put a lot more miles on it. For me, getting value out of a car is so much more than just getting your money back. After all, if all I was worried about at the end of this was making sure my bank balance was just as healthy as when I started, I would have bought a picture of a 430 Scuderia and put a deposit on a house. But I want to enjoy the car, and I really have been enjoying it. So what's next with the 430? Well, I intend to keep using it for as long as the weather allows me, and then when it does turn, which will probably be in about a month or two, I'm going to send it off to Vintro, who are a storage facility that I've done a little bit of a deal with, so they'll be looking after this, the 550, and probably something else as well. This means that when I do get a nice day, I can go and grab the car, it'll be all cleaned and ready, and I can enjoy it and hopefully make a lot more content with it. This weekend, I'm heading down to Silverstone for the Ferrari Challenge. I'll be there on the Sunday with a few friends, so if you're about, you're in the area, you want to come and see some nice cars, please do come along. I think it's also a great way to meet a lot of Ferrari owners, because actually, I know they don't have the best reputation being sort of, slightly stuffy, richer than Yao types, but actually, most of the Ferrari owners that I've met have been really decent, down-to-earth people that just love their cars. One of the things I really want to achieve with both this and the 550 is showing that Ferraris are there to be used. Not only that, but they're actually much better when you do put some miles on them. And if you are a Ferrari owner, or you have been in the past, and you've taken your car somewhere interesting or done something unusual with it, I'd love it if you could send me a photo or a video of what you were up to, give me a little bit of information, and I want to make a video coming soon talking about all the cool things you can do with your Ferrari once you've got them. If you have bought through a main dealer, there are lots of things that they can organise for you, and Dick Lovett have sorted something like that for me as a way of apology for all the stuff that's happened with this car. That's great for everybody because it means I get to have some fun with my Ferrari. It's their way of saying sorry for the cock up, and it means you get some cool content as well. In fact, it might even involve a polo match, which I'm not so sure I want to take part in. I'm slightly scared of horses. Now, I know a lot of you are keen to know what's happened with the 550. I'm very glad to tell you that it hasn't gone anywhere. It's certainly not sold. In fact, quite the opposite. I've actually paid off my finance on that car, so it's now 100% mine. Something I'm very happy about because it's a really, truly special thing, and I can see it staying around for quite a while. However, it did need a lot of things doing to it in order to bring it up to the standard that I'd really like it. So what started as a fairly basic service has now transformed into sort of gentle restoration work. For that reason, it's been at Meridian for close to 3 months now, and I've spent quite a lot of money on it. As you can imagine, that is going to be a separate video. The car actually should have been back by now. I went to go and collect it, but it turned out there was just one last issue that wanted to get in the way. And as that was being solved, I thought, you know what, sod it, let's get some other things done as well. I can tell you the car is looking its absolute best. It's stunning, and when I get it back, it'll also be driving better than it ever has during my ownership. So I hope I can retrieve it in time to get still a few nice days of enjoyment out of it. But yeah, 550, not going anywhere. Now, making videos like this are very difficult. I wish that I didn't have to. I would love to be able to tell you that absolutely everything about my Ferrari ownership experience has been perfect, nothing at all has gone wrong. But that's simply not true. And lying to you doesn't help. If I don't tell you about the things that go wrong, you don't have any reason to believe me when I tell you about the things that go right. So I'll tell you simply, yes, I was very, very unhappy at the state this car was handed over to me. They knew that it had problems. They knew the suspension had issues because I told them, the tech who prepped the car told them, and 6 days before I took delivery, it got an MOT at Dick Lovett, where it was highlighted that the car did have play in the suspension. So somebody somewhere made the decision to not fix that issue, presumably in the name of saving a few pennies. However, I am equally happy to say that yes, the problems have more or less now all been sorted, and the only remaining issues they have said they're going to rectify, and without too much of a fight. All companies do make mistakes. Dick Lovett, of course, is no exception, but I judge a company not on the mistakes they make, but how they deal with them. And the way they've dealt with these things have been exemplary. They have fixed all the issues I've presented with them. They have gone above and beyond and sorted other things I hadn't noticed that they could have gotten away with not doing, but they simply said to their techs, fix the car, sort everything that needs sorting. They did, and they've made a gesture to me, which I'll talk to you more about in a separate video, which I think adequately compensates me for the issues that I've suffered. This, I think, is all important to say, and it's very easy to buy a car like this from a dealer and have them simply go, you've bought it, now go away. They haven't done that. They've taken ownership of the problem. That really is all I can ever ask from a company. I suppose in some small way it's probably done me a favour, because a lot of people assumed because I'm in bed with Ferrari's press department and I get press cars from them and the reputation that they have, I would be too terrified to say that anything's gone wrong. But no, and at no point have Ferrari said to me to not make this video. They've had no hand in this whatsoever, as you can probably tell, because I think it's been a fairly honest piece, and that really is all I can ever sort of say. You know, I just want to be fully and completely transparent about what it is that I do. So these are the things that have happened with this car. Do I regret buying it? Absolutely not. If I knew in advance the problems I was going to have, still would have gone through with it, because I absolutely love it. At the end of the day, yeah, maybe I am a little bit more tolerant of problems on a car like this, because it's not the sort of thing you can just go and get anywhere. You know, it's not a 320D. It is a really, truly special thing, and I love it to pieces. It's already been on some pretty memorable trips, and I hope it will be on many, many more. So there we have it. There's a bit of an update. Thanks to Dave and Kat for letting me pinch the pub car park, as they have on a few occasions before. I hope to see you all at some point in the future, maybe at an event or something like that. For now, thanks for continuing to watch. Bye-bye.